But let's go ahead and get started. If I could ask each of the panelists just to do a quick, less than 30-second introduction, that would be great. Marty, do you want to go ahead and kick us off since you're up there?
Sure. Marty Kaufman with InfiniPoint Consulting, and been doing customer success, customer-facing work for probably the better part of 20 years, including within the federal government at FEMA and Homeland Security. So a little bit of a broader point of view on some of the preparedness stuff, but interesting that it still kind of comes to bear, even talking some of the things we're talking about today.
Yep, great, thank you. And Marty's been a speaker and a guest on the Jason's podcast that will be released very soon. So it was really great to have his insights and expertise. Thank you for coming in. Michael?
Hi, I'm Michael Blaisdell. I'm the Executive Director of the Customer Success Association, and I run the forum on the Customer Success Forum on LinkedIn. And I've been thinking about this stuff is applicable to stuff that I've been talking to CS people worldwide about, the need for setting up a communication strategy. So hopefully we'll get a little bit more into that as we go along today.
Great, thank you so much. Sue, would you like to do a quick intro?
Yes, hello everyone, and thanks very much for participating. So I'm Sue Navitt-Moore, the founder of Success Track Enterprise, which is a customer success consultancy based here in Europe. And I'm also the co-founder of Customer Success Mastermind with a certain Jason Whitehead, who you've probably heard of, and which is an online continuous career development program to help customer success professionals help their customers achieve business outcomes. So thanks all.
Awesome, thanks. And last but not least, Mr. Jason.
Good afternoon, good morning everyone. I'm Jason Noble, based here in London. I'm VP of Customer Success for Vinley, who works in the world of automotive technology. I'm also the other half of the Jason's Take On. I'm very pleased to be here, kind of talking about this from the European perspective. You know, this is a global challenge that we've got right now. So really something that's really key to be talking about, and really glad we've got such a great audience and great panel to discuss it with.
Great, thank you so much. And it's exciting too. Sue is also based in Paris and has, been impacted by some things as well and knows some folks. Just to give a little structure for the conversation, we're going to sort of talk about 4 areas. One is sort of what's the need and the opportunity here for customer success teams to take bold and proactive action during emergencies such as the coronavirus. And hopefully some of the ideas here will apply to any future emergency. We'll then talk a little bit about if your customers are not yet impacted by the situation or a future emergency, but you have some lead time, what should you do and what can you do to prepare for an emergency? And then going into what do you actually do to execute during an emergency, whether your customers are already impacted by coronavirus or, in the future, if you've got customers in a flood zone or a hurricane or other mass disruption thing, what do you do in the throes of it? And then finally, what are some of the things that you do coming out of it to not only return to normal operations, but also hopefully build off of the positive experience your customers have had working with you during this time? What would that look like? Before we jump into the first area, though, I'm going to end the polling here. If you had a chance, and we'll just talk and share the results pretty quickly. The first question here, how many of your customers are already experiencing disruption due to the normal operations? So we have, one person, the majority of their customers already there. Looks like we've got a few down in the, half to 3/4 area. Even more down a quarter of them or so, quarter to half, and then few. The majority so far, it looks like, are still not impacted, which is good to see that there's still a little bit of time to prepare, assuming that things will affect them in the future, though it may never. And then looking at the shift, what do we expect is going to happen in the next 2 to 4 weeks? And it looks like increasingly people are aware that their customers may be impacted, and there's going to be some opportunities and needs there. So I'm glad to see that more people are not facing this issue yet, but I'm very excited to see what kind of planning and preparation we can do. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into our discussion. Under the first section, just to create some context, I think for a lot of us, customer success is still in its infancy, even though we've seen tremendous progress in the last 5 or 7 years or so. But it is quickly becoming mainstream, and I know I can't recall a time since we've really had so much customer success focus coming out when there's been an emergency like this and a global piece that impacts all of our customers at once. So I think this is sort of a new territory for customer success teams. What can we do and what should we do? And what does this mean going forward? So let me throw out to the panel and ask you guys to ask first, why is this such an important topic for CS, and what is the need, and what's the opportunity here? And sort of related to that, what are the risks if you don't do anything as a customer success team? So who would like to share their thoughts first?
I'll go first if you want.
All right, great.
I think one of the big differences here is that this is the first time that we've had something that really is a global problem. If you look at a lot of the challenges that we've had previously, they might be more local, but this really is a global problem, and it's beginning to impact all sorts of different areas, from supply chains to economies. If you look at today, the changes in the stock market, and on the verge of recession. So it has some big and global impacts that I don't think we've seen before. And I think as the world of kind of SaaS has come up over the last 20 years or so, we've never been in this situation. I think a lot of our customers don't know what to do. I think there are big challenges for them. So they're looking for help, for guidance, for direction, and just to know that they're in good hands. Ultimately, our customers are providing services to their customers. We've got to make sure that they can still do that with the services they need from us. With the days of SaaS, a lot of technology now is hosted. It's provided by data centers, operations. They need to make sure that they're still working, but that they can deliver to their customers, and that things like their supply chains aren't impacted. So I think it is something that I don't think we faced a situation like this before. I think the impact is a lot wider than it has been. And it's interesting just seeing the number of people from the different regions that are joining this call. But this is something that it's not going to get better very quickly. I think we've got to be prepared for this to get worse than it is now, but helping our customers understand that situation.
Yeah, I really echo that. And I think we're really in this unprecedented situation where usually it's business as usual, but at the moment it really is this business disruption. And so I think as customer success people, we have to anticipate how to help our customers do business not as usual. And in some unfortunate cases, no business at all. We've seen a lot of companies actually laying off staff or even going bankrupt. We heard here in Europe of one of the leading airlines called Flybe that actually went bankrupt last week it was. So I think, in customer success, I always say customer success is about detecting risks and opportunities. And in this case, it's even more accentuated, because it's not about detecting the risk, because the risk is there, the risk is omnipresent. Mm-hmm. What we have to do now, I think, is just to try and identify what is the impact of this global risk that you pointed out, Jason, and what can we do about that? How do we anticipate that? And in some cases, it's probably a bit too late, but how can we remedy what damage has already been done? And how do we anticipate as customer success people what we can do for our clients?
Marty, any thoughts?
The only thing I'll add is that something that makes this a little bit unique in my mind is that if we want to help our customers, we're going to have to look a few levels deeper than we normally do. Even if we go all the way back to the financial crisis, being able to assess the impact on my customers was doable. It was painful, but it was doable. It was pretty linear. You could understand what the impact to them would be and understand, is there a remedy? Is there something I can offer? What's going to happen in the environment? And in some ways, this builds on what Sue was saying, but I think this is not as linear, and it's impacting not just directly their ability to do business, but sometimes even their ability to get supplies. They're in a totally different industry that normally we would not think of as being impacted, but their ability to access supply chain or something else, or even personnel, is disrupted. And so I think the diagnosis of what can help is far more complex than it ever has been, and our response will similarly be probably much more nuanced and varied than it would have been through anything else that we've seen to this point.
Right. Michael, what are your thoughts?
One of this highlights something that I've been emphasizing for quite some time, which is the importance of domain expertise, the knowledge about your customer's business that you have. And when a CSM can talk as a trusted advisor to their customers, they have another advantage. They're talking to each individual customer is only dealing with their business, and they're only seeing as much as they can see from their vantage point. The CSM, on the other hand, is dealing with multiple businesses of the same type. So they're in a position where they spot a resource, an approach, a strategy for one, they can share it with others. But this is indeed a real test of, your status as a trusted advisor to your customers. And to get there, of course, you have to rely on that domain expertise.
I think that's a really good point. And, a lot of the CSMs that I talk about or the leaders say that we want our CSMs to become the trusted advisor, but we don't know how to get there. And I think if this is also an opportunity to help build that trust and to help add new value. And I consistently hear, we want our CSMs to be proactive. We want our CS team to be proactive and not just being experts in our product, but experts in making our customers successful. What greater opportunity than when there is an immediate need to be successful? And I think sort of related to that, you get the situation where if customers are facing mass disruption, whether it's supply chain, whether it's being able to travel, whether it's just even collaborate and communicate when you can't go into the office, which is very new and not something that people learn to do effectively overnight. I mean, we're all here in virtual and have been doing it for quite a while, that it's natural to us, but for a lot of folks, it's not. That there may be some immediate needs as a CSM and say, how can I help my customers in very short time figure out what they can do differently using my tool and my product to actually get there and to help their business during this disruption? And that's very different than a business as usual, like, here's what you need to do and let's come back in a quarter kind of thing. I would throw out there. Let me ask you this, what sort of disruptions to normal operations do you think people need to be experiencing, and how will that impact the way people would typically use a product or service they've purchased from a SaaS provider? What should CSMs say, wow, this is going to be different because of this? What should we be doing differently?
I think one of the key things is that you as a partner, a provider, you need to make sure that the services that you're providing are robust, they're redundant, that they are still working. So as a business, you're going to have your own challenges. You need to make sure that you can still provide those services to your customers. And I think that's really important because your customer just wants to make sure that they're delivering the value that you're giving them. So you've got to, as a priority, make sure that your services are delivering what they're meant to do. And if there's any disaster planning, any disaster scenario, contingency stuff that you need to do, make sure you're doing that. And I think that's a big challenge. We've got to make sure that our own business supply chains are working there. I think you've also got to realize that your customers are going to have a lot of other priorities. They're going to have a lot of other things that they're going to be dealing with, and perhaps won't have as much time as normal to spend with you looking at value. And they almost want to know that you are just delivering that value and that everything is working, that you're there to call on if needed.
Yep. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that also, and that's part of the role of the customer success person, is to try and understand what is the degree of impact, because that impact on that business is probably not just going to affect the people that you're normally working with, those people who are actually using your software or whatever it is. It could be their team members. So I think it's important to open up your mind a little bit to try and understand generally how it's impacting their whole business and not just the team of users. And be thinking out of the box in how you can actually probably innovate with what you're already proposing, business as usual, and how you can innovate with what you're proposing to actually help not only the people that are using your software, but also to their teammates. So that's really important, first of all, to really understand, to really be listening very actively so that you're helping your customers to verbalize what the level of impact is. And that's in itself is not an easy exercise, but I think that's a starting point to be able to really help them, right?
One of the facets of this that I found interesting is I was reading something the other day that it was a bit of advice to companies that, hey, if you're sending your employees home to work, that will have implications for your IT structure in your virtual private networks and the capacity set up. And I think this is a situation where CSMs can get involved, which is to proactively reach out and going, hey, look, one of the common strategies is to send people home to work, and you need to take care of these issues when you do that. So you're anticipating the need, because the basic of the disruption for us is going to be, obviously lack of travel, but lack of person-to-person contact. And there may be some resource limitations because, are you able to go shopping?
Right.
So all of those things, you think through how people suddenly working at home could be impacted and come up with potential solutions and talk to your customers to see what they're already doing, because of course, if they've come up with some innovations, you can then turn around and pass that to the rest of your customer base.
Exactly. You know, and I think that's also a really good point too. If your customers are in the throes of emergency and trying to figure things out, what actual resources can you build for them very quickly? It doesn't have to be pretty, just to get it out the door that they can reshare, that it's one more tool that they can share en masse, that they didn't have to build and they didn't have to spend time. You know, and even if it is simple, and I think that comes back to, you know, that area around how do you help prepare for an emergency? You know, I think another thing to think about too, and I want to ask is, to what degree should this fall on customer success teams to lead this effort internally in your organization if you're a vendor? So if you're a large vendor, you might have, you know, crisis response teams and dedicated communication teams. But if you're a small or medium-sized company, you know, and if you have, you know, a very heavy development staff or sales staff or something like that, there may not be anyone to really take the charge and champion this. So should it fall to the customer success group to really lead this effort and help manage the customer impact?
I'll jump in there and say yes-ish. And not as a land grab on behalf of customer success, but there's a very important role here that I think success plays that the others cannot, which is, you know, we're being presented with new and different use cases, possibly for our product, for our services, or for our personnel. And success is going to have the best understanding of that actual use case to be able to be that translator of, this is what's happening in the market with our customers. I could see a use case here for us doing X, Y, and Z. I mean, Jason gave the example of possibly a quick build. I think other tools and resources that many, not all, but many would have available. If I've seen some real powerful redirections of user communities, allowing people to help people directly by seeding your community with the intent to help. People will jump in and do that, and that's all you're doing is tending the space to allow people to do the good things they want to do, but we can often provide a platform for that, which is helpful. Or even redirecting not just our product, but some of the effort of our resources, if there's a way that we can help facilitate, maybe not recovery, but at least get people resources, different information, a different way of doing things in the interim that gets them over the hump. And I think that visibility, making that connection between the need and what we can actually provide, especially for a small or medium-sized enterprise, is probably more likely to be something that success understands more quickly and can act on more so than trying to direct somebody else towards it.
I would completely agree with that. Because after all, who has the relationship? Whose point in the relationship is customer success, or it certainly should be.
I would add as well, I think certainly customer success is on the forefront, and so they're the actual teams who are really trying to understand the level of impact that the virus is having on their business. But I also would add that I think we always say that customer success is the responsibility of the whole company. So I think it is an opportunity within companies to really make sure that all the other teams, especially if it's a small or medium-sized company, can actually have a part to play in really trying to help the customers. So I think that, you know, it's important to get the sales teams, all the client-facing teams involved. And why not even spread it further? You know, I think you could probably just come up with some solutions which can even involve your partners, your suppliers, or even solutions which could probably involve some of your other existing clients. So you all get together, and I think, you know, strength is in the unity. So I think this is a fantastic opportunity to think about innovative ways of helping your clients by spreading the responsibility not just to the customer success team.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And you know, for so long we hear CS teams say, "Oh, sales and marketing don't really understand what we do. They don't understand what we get." This is a great opportunity to get in front of that. Couple of questions and comments that came in from the participants. You know, Pam writes, "It's a great reason to check in with customers around all of this," which I think is very true. Then again, I think you have to do it carefully, that you have a clear agenda so that you're not wasting their time when they may be really busy. But Ed asked a really great question, which is, do you foresee the CSM becoming an active role in customers' business continuity disaster recovery plans? Is this what we should be asking our customers to do in the future?
I think that's
Yes.
a great question. Yeah, I think it's a big yes as well. I think absolutely there's a lot of key points. Marty hit on something there. You did, Michael. As the trusted advisors and the ones that understand our customers' business best, we're best placed to help with this. And this is a catalyst to actually say, actually, we should be involved in it and add something else to what the CSM should be doing. So how do you help your customers when it comes to business continuity? So I absolutely think we should be doing it. And I think this is the starting point. If you're not already involved in those plans, this is the starting point to get involved in those plans. I think to your point, Jason, it will involve other people in the business as well. You know, it isn't, as Sue said, it isn't just the CSMs, it's the team. Mm-hmm. You might not be the expert in your business to talk about business continuity, but you can bring in an expert if needed.
I love that point about being included in a customer's business continuity plan. What greater way to secure renewal in your place with the customer and be sticky if you can show that you are critical to their operations in a crisis and that your CS team is going above and beyond to add extra value so that they view, I mean, they can swap out tools anytime, you know, but if they view your company as one that stands up and adds extra value and is part of that, discusses it from the very beginning, that's a great way to really satisfy a customer and lock in a long-term relationship. Let's move on a little bit to, I want to talk about preparing for an emergency. So we had quite a few people say our customers are not quite there yet, but we do expect them to be there. And I have another very short poll that we'll go and ask you guys to go ahead and fill out. Let me see if I can do that here. So for this poll, I want to understand, what has your CS team done to prepare a response for the coronavirus? And you can say multiple choice here, nothing. We're sort of embracing a hope-based strategy. You know, we did a quick assessment of our customers' needs, but that's about it. So we've got a sense of it, but we really haven't gone beyond that. We've identified some needs and proactively reached out to them. We developed a few communications and sent out a couple of resources, and we've developed or are developing a robust collection of resources and communication to really be proactive and lead this emergency. Okay, folks coming in, we'll give it a couple more seconds. Good to see you here.
I liked your line. I liked your line, Jason, about you can swap out a tool anytime, mm-hmm. because you can. What you can't swap out is your trusted advisor.
Very true. That's a good, and you certainly don't want to swap it out in an emergency. But you know, coming out of an emergency, if the trust is gone, you know that there's something there. All right, I'll go ahead. We'll give it one more second, and I think we're good to go. And I'll share the results here. So where did we land in terms of results? So just under 30% are going for a hope-based strategy, which, you know, is not surprising. This is new ground, and that may be something that they will change in the future or may not be relevant. A few people doing some quick assessments, quite a few doing a little bit of light communications and sent a couple of resources. The majority seem to land there. And then a few have developed a robust plan and collections looking to go there. So some interesting results there as well too. It looks like there's still a little work to be done and that people are taking some steps but not quite sure what to really do next. So thanks for sharing that. So let's get started here. If a CS team has time to prepare for an emergency, so maybe you know, a lot of your customers are not yet in a quarantine zone or they haven't felt the business disruption yet, but they anticipate it will be coming, especially as a result of other things. What should the CS team be doing? How do they get ahead of this if they have a little bit of time, whether it's a week, a day, or a month?
Yeah,
go ahead,
I think, yeah, I was thinking that one of the things which would be interesting is to have some kind of matrix where you can actually evaluate the level of impact on the business of your customers. So you would obviously have to determine what would be the characteristics within this matrix. So you could have things like, you know, is the business going to be threatened with layoffs? Is the business going to be threatened with some kind of temporary hold or whatever? And you have different characteristics. And then based on that, you can then segment your customer base based on that level of impact, and then work out action plans and the resources which are necessary on your company's behalf in order to put into place. So I think, you know, communications plan is great. I see 20% of the people who are on this webinar have already started to do communications. That's great. And I think to have an action plan based on the level impact, which you've actually been able to define, I think will help you to actually prioritize those action plans. So that might be a good idea, I think.
I will.
This is classic contingency planning. You know, what could happen? Well, we read the newspapers and we see some things of of things that could happen, of lockdowns of area, of inability to get to resources, all the stuff. Now, how likely is it? We establish, we do some thinking on that basis. What happens if it does happen? I mean, all classic contingency planning things, so that as Sue says, you develop a matrix and you know what to put into it because you've seen some of the things and you can anticipate some of the others. And again, we rely on our knowledge of our customers to say, okay, how likely is this? And if it did hit, what are our options? What are some of the things that we could do to respond to this effectively?
Yeah, and in the near term, since we always base our planning on the last disaster and we can't quite predict what the next one will be, but Sue provided one axis of that matrix, which is what's the impact. And you can think of that multiple ways, whether it's level of severity, whether it's regional, national, global, things that just kind of give us a sense of scale and severity. In terms of the other axis that you can put on that as part of that matrix is what would your response be? Because there are scenarios where the best thing you can offer is silence. There are other scenarios where the best thing you can offer is sympathy, but you want to offer it. You want to let people know that, like, I'm there for you. And the third one is there are instances where you can offer a remedy. There is something that we can actually do. And so even if ahead of time you just understand, depending on the severity and then depending on what we can do in that circumstance, it can be very prescriptive and helpful to your future success leaders or whoever is going to be faced with it to be able to pick this up and run with it. So,
right.
Yeah.
I love that point too of sometimes silence is the best thing. If your customers are in a crisis, they don't have time for noise. And some of that may also be very practical. If you have automation set up to ping people about business as usual that is not relevant to them, don't waste their time with it. Suspend that for a little while. But send them some notices saying, look, we're suspending some normal activities during this time frame. Our product and service name may not be the right one to help you through this crisis, but we're going to hold off some of the noise until this is over, and then we will come back to you. If there's other things we can do, let us know. But I mean, what better way to show that we're trying to understand your situation, like let them get out of your way.
And another kind of best practice that I'll mention that can be used in almost any situation, but your language will vary. If you know that you're going to have a conversation with your customer at some point, but that point is not now, you know they're impacted, you don't know where they're at, but their focus is not on you. That message, whether it's a call, an email, or something else to let them know that I'm here, I understand, and you let me know when we have to have this conversation, but I'm the person you talk to. The timing is yours. They're going to have 100 other points of contact about all sorts of various things that they won't know. If are they about to get cut off by their phone company because they missed a payment, any of this, and just letting them know that you're the one thing they don't need to worry about right now, but when the time does come to talk, I'm your person. It allows them to just kind of compartmentalize that, put it on the shelf, deal with the immediate stuff, but takes you off their consideration list of everything that can go wrong. You are now something that in the future will go right when the timing is right. But there's no matter what the severity is, no matter what you are, like, that is something that can be used almost in every circumstance, is to let them know that you are aware that something is going on with them. And when the time is right, we're ready to have that conversation about what we can do then to be helpful or to move forward or to remedy what can be remedied.
I think that's such a key point there, Martin. That really is a customer. They want to know that you're still going to be delivering what you're meant to be delivering. Like you say, they can park it. They've got hundreds of these other things to deal with. We don't know what the priority for them is. The big thing they want to know is, I know you're still going to be doing what you're meant to be doing.
Yeah.
And like you say, we're not there. I think we've got to really be careful that we don't want to jump in and say, well, we can help you do this and this and this, and try and be too proactive. As Michael said, you've got to understand your customer.
Yeah.
But when you understand them, you then know what kind of level of communication they want. But the biggest thing they're going to want to know is that you do what you're meant to be doing, that the services we're providing are there.
Yeah, Jason, I think that's so important. Like, if there is something that you can do, strip it down to the bare minimum so that they can focus very quickly and say, don't worry about the rest. We had a great point from Irene, and Irene, if you'd like to unmute yourself and join us, I'd like to share. I think it's fantastic here. She writes, also consider that as a vendor, you may not be the top priority for your customers. One of the key things to do is let your customers know that you're available and taking steps to make sure your products and services will be available and are not going to be impacted. I think that's something we haven't talked about yet, the impact to your ability to execute. But also you can provide resources, but don't repeat what they already likely know. That's not useful, so don't waste their time. I think that's so important. But I really love Irene's point here. The key thing you can do is to understand what you need to do internally to make sure your company is able to keep your product functioning, especially if it is a mission critical function. So how great would it be if you're relying on a mission critical functional system to have them reach out and say, here are the steps we've taken to make sure you don't get disrupted. Here's how you can rely on us. And one less thing for them to worry about. Irene, thank you so much. That's a fantastic point.
I think that's just a brilliant summary. It really is. That's exactly what we need to be doing. Make sure that we're delivering what we're meant to be doing.
And, I think, just to wind down the discussion on preparing for an emergency is really looking at that. What also do we need to do internally to make sure we've got redundancy and capacity in case our internal staff gets hit, if our organization is disrupted, look at our own business continuity plans as well. So I think those are all really important things. A thought too is, as we're going through like the business, Ed's question about should you be included in someone's business continuity plan, if when you're onboarding a customer, you actually talk about how you help them in an emergency, get them to tell you where you fall. If you're excluded, great. Find a way to flag that for future customer emergencies to say we are unlikely to be useful to them. How do we go in? These were in silent mode. These were in a critical support mode. And you may have a very important product that for whatever reason is not relevant to certain segments of your customers during an emergency where others may rely on you wholeheartedly. So let's move forward a little bit here. Shifting a little bit, I've got one last poll as well too. If you are in the middle of an emergency, as some of folks already are, we anticipate more will be, let me go through and just sort of share this one. Launch the poll. What are you currently doing to help customers already impacted by the coronavirus? People are already there, and nothing is business as usual for us, and that's an okay answer. We're in reactive mode, and when they contact us, we're here for them. That's also okay. We're proactively sharing recommendations and resources for how our product can help during this emergency. We're providing free access to key modules of software for a limited time to help them get through the crisis. And if you have others, please specify in the chat window. We'd love to hear. Interesting, that one about free access. One of the things that I had suggested in the emergency guide that was out there, but also I saw that Microsoft and Google were allowing temporary free access to things like Teams and other things to help people collaborate remotely during time. Do you have customers out there that they may have purchased your software, but they haven't gone through yet and licensed all of the requisite functionality that you could give them temporary access to for free, and then potentially extend it later or not, depending how that may go, but to show that you are a true partner and build that trust and relationship. People are doing that, let's know it. Let me go in and, where'd the poll go? Here. I think we've got most everyone. I'll end the poll and share the results here. So we've got a few people who it's business as usual, and it looks like the majority are really in that reactive mode. And followed closely by, we're sharing some resources for how our product can help them during an emergency. That's great to hear. We do have, looks like at least one or two people who are sharing some extra functionality. And in the chat window, we had someone share a couple of comments there, which thank you. We're taking into consideration businesses that are impacted financially too during the renewal period. I'd love to hear some more about that. Another one, we updated our software so that we ensure the solution addresses this outbreak, but also made it so that future outbreaks are addressed as well. That's great. And I think, I think there's something there that if you can quickly update your software, if it's relevant to immediately resolve this issue, it's great. Being careful not to introduce new bugs or instability that can sometimes happen, especially from a rushed release. So, it's always getting that balance right of how important is this functionality versus the potential to disruption there. So let me open it up to the group then. What are your thoughts on what customers should be doing to respond during an emergency? What would you like to see that you think would be helpful?
I have to give the first credit to Hofer, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. It was actually on my list, but as well, in a practical sense, sometimes one of the best things we can do for Remedy is, again, to let customers know that look, you don't have to, you're not in your renewal period, just let it run. We'll talk about this later, or offering like direct financial relief, especially on those month-to-months. If you're dealing with enormous organizations that are paying annually or quarterly, and that's fine. But if you're dealing with smaller shops where every month they are actually looking at that payment and having to make a choice, this is a great time to just acknowledge that you're not the top of that heap, and their recovery is more important than your next maybe 2 months of recurring revenue. What a great statement to be able to make for them. And
they'll remember it, and they'll appreciate the loyalty that you showed to them.
yeah, I mean, there's two outcomes there. Either they come back and everything's fine and they appreciate it, or they couldn't remain viable and they had to drop out anyway. Like you're not cutting off this forever stream of revenue by doing the right thing in the moment. That's a bit of a fallacy that we assume that we're letting go of all the LTV, but no, something has happened that has changed that math. Do the right thing with that in mind.
Yeah, as Jason says, they will remember. And after all, this is a relationship, and it may go dormant for a while, but that doesn't mean the end of the relationship, and it shouldn't.
Right. And I think that's also, Michael, to your point, relationships are between people. So the person that you give access to now, when they move to their next company, they might very well bring you in when they have different resources as well. I look at the airlines now and how they're changing their cancellation fees and other things temporarily to make a response. Based here in Washington, D.C., we always have great excitement whenever a budget doesn't pass and employees are furloughed. And I know the daycare centers near us, many of them have a lot of government employees who work there. And they said, look, you can defer payments until you get back to work. We know it's going to happen. It's going to come. This is just something we can do. And that really strikes loyalty. And that's so important.
Yeah.
That example of the airlines, sorry, is a really key one, because you're not seeing all airlines consistently have the same waiver of cancellation fees. And I think it's something that you want to see as a customer. You want to know that they're thinking about you, and want to know that they understand the situation. So I think it's something that we need to be very conscious of. And when we're dealing with our customers, make sure any decisions we make aren't going to impact them financially. And like you said, they come back. We want them to come back to us in the future.
Definitely. And I've seen that, price offers with the airlines. I mentioned, unfortunately, there was an airline, Flybe, here in Europe that went bust last week. And so I saw the solidarity in the market. You had other airlines and even Eurostar, linking the continent with the UK, offering really cheap prices just to get people backwards and forwards. So I think there's kind of solidarity as well within the industry, which you as a vendor can actually propose, I think.
And I think even as an employee, would you rather work for a company that, supports its community and you're proud to be a part of it and that you want to be loyal to and joyfully promote? Or do you want to say, these bastards are only after a dime and, I wouldn't work here and I wouldn't suggest you come here. It carries through. And I think it's very important to think about that. But another angle too, I think, that is the financial one, which is not just their ability to pay, but, what should we be expecting from this emergency or future ones of our renewals, 3 months, 6 months, a year down the road, when people come up and, we're already seeing severe financial disruption. There were things in the news about, disruptions to the oil market and how that's in the stock market plummeting. And, that's always going to be up and down as well too. What should customer success teams be doing to either help their executives or their sales folks or everyone else set expectations around future revenues, or what actions could be just to actually help secure revenues a little bit more than might happen otherwise if we don't do anything?
Yeah, well, I think in times of uncertainty like this, there's doubt everywhere, and I think so. Even sales processes are slowing down. So I think in times like this, where we can at least ensure the C-suites that that we do have opportunities of probably maintaining some revenue, is with the existing clients. So I think that's where the role of customer success and what we're trying to do by having these save plans in place is going to help. Because in uncertainty, I think the sales process are going to be slowed down, and certainly the investors are not investing, right? So they're fearing, and I think there's no playbook for investors about how to deal with a worldwide epidemic. So in times like this, how do you keep your existing client base? And that's what customer success is all about. So if you can prove that to your C-suite, and you can prove the actions that you're doing now and even after, when this crisis has hopefully gone away, I think that's a great path to pave the way for customer success in future.
That's interesting. I'm wondering too, to what degree should people be focusing on, here's specific stuff about the emergency and getting through there, because there are some immediate needs, but you also don't want to instill panic. And then also, how do you get people, and when's the right point to start to get people focused on coming out of this crisis even stronger and building back from it so that it doesn't go any deeper than it needs to be? What are your thoughts? When is the right time to start focusing on recovery and expansion as a result of the actions we took during the crisis?
I think one of the things you've got to do is make sure the crisis is over. Right? And I think right now that is one of the big challenges is we don't know the timings. You've also got to, it's not just when it's over for you or the general public, but when is it over for your customer? So again, going back to the knowing your customer, make sure that you understand when the impact of this emergency, this disaster is no longer impacting your customer. And only then approach them the right way. I don't think you want to rush into these financial conversations or make assumptions. You've got to know what the right thing to do is for your customer.
I've seen other companies in the past where customers had faced financial disruption that they were able to get creative with their renewal contracts as well too, where they said, look, we'll give you access to the next level up for the same price in exchange for a multi-year lock-in or other things like that. Are there creative ways that customer success teams and sales teams should be trying to reach out to their customers to help lessen the blow of any financial impact, but still make sure they remain loyal customers?
Well, I think the essence of it is you want the long term. Yes, you may have a short-term dip in your incoming revenue, but that's not the important thing to look at. The important thing to look at is the overall impact on the long term of this income stream, this profitable relationship. It's not your technology that you're selling, it's the relationship.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So before we move on to after the emergency, so we've identified that there is a need here and that there's some real opportunities as well too. What sort of things should CS teams be doing specifically to help align their internal organization during this crisis? What should they be doing with product or sales or marketing or their executives to make sure that your organization as a whole is having a fast and effective response?
I'll just reiterate one I had before, which was be the eyes and ears of what's actually happening with that customer base. And then being able to translate what we're seeing in the market into language that marketing, finance, sales, whoever at product needs to, being able to put it in their language so that they can similarly understand it and understand how their area of expertise may contribute in some way.
I think at the same point, you've got to be the eyes and ears for your customer of what's happening in your business. So if you've got challenges as a business, make sure that you're that point of contact for your customer to let them know what your current situation is. So it is, I think it really re-emphasizes the importance of your customer success team as the big communicators for the customer.
I see Star shared a great point too, communicate who is impacted. I think that's important.
Yeah.
I would even throw out as well too, making sure the other teams are aware of what you guys are doing and what you're presenting to the customer so they can reinforce that message in a list of don't do X stuff. Because we already hear how many times sales misrepresents customer success or oversells and sets false expectations. You don't want to have that happen during a crisis. So what can we do to say, guys, reel it in for now until this is over. Don't do X, Y, and Z. Here are your talking points, stay focused kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it really presents, because I think in under normal circumstances, the customer success manager, the role of customer success is the eyes and ears. But I think it's even accentuated even more in this situation. So I think it really needs a great level of agility within the company, and really for everybody, even at the C-level, to be really thinking out of the box and to really be adaptable to this situation. So I think the customer success team can be a catalyst for that. So I think that's a great opportunity as well for customer success to prove its worth.
And I think that's a great segue then to sort of the final area of the discussion, which is, what should you do after the emergency? Things are getting back to normal. There may still be some disruptions to the finances and the economy, or at least for a period of time, so it gets back on track. And there's always normal business cycles anyway. But from every great crisis comes opportunity. What should CS teams do to learn from this experience, and how do they either capitalize that internally to drive better results and better alignment, as well as with their customers externally, kind of thing? So I guess the first one, how do we learn from this experience, and what do you think will be the key takeaways that people should take from this crisis, or should ask themselves, how does this apply to us from this crisis?
I think it's natural to I mean, the standard stuff is what worked and what didn't and why. And that's a generalist approach and certainly needs to be taken. But for me, I look at, as you're doing that, one of the key questions that I would be asking is, what did we learn about our customers through this process? And, what can we do with that knowledge?
Mm-hmm. How do we respond faster next time and get ahead of this? I'd be curious.
One of the one of the things this is, we haven't been in a situation like this before, as we said earlier on, that this is the first kind of series of events that is a global impact. And I think there's a lot to learn from it. But I think as Michael said, it's making sure you understand what's worked, what's not worked, what's the impact been on your organization, what are the things that you can do better. And you're going to have so many different kind of cases with all your different customers as to how have things worked for them. That I think the information that you're going to get, as long as you collate it, document it properly, is really going to be a phenomenal source for future events like this that happen in the future, an opportunity to how to be better placed to avoid future disasters where they can be avoided.
Right. I'm curious to think if you believe there'll be any impacts to how CS teams do their segmentation as well too. Is there almost like a emergency-based segmentation needs and updating their playbooks and even putting in some skeletal automations or other things that they can trigger off quickly in an emergency? Or is that overkill that you think there's no need or that people just won't do it because after emergency is over, nobody cares until the next one? You've got a FEMA background.
I think you actually made a really good point. And I think an emergency playbook, if you haven't got one already, build one. I think that's a really good point. But the idea of kind of emergency segmentation, maybe there are a series of customers that are at risk, unlike any others. Maybe you need to look at them differently. So there might be something that you need to do around that. Whether I'd call it emergency segmentation or not, I don't know. But that kind of thinking, I think, absolutely. But the idea of an emergency playbook or disaster playbook is something that you absolutely should have.
Yeah,
and maybe there's one there that ties up with all of your segments.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that because I think generally when you do have segmentation, you usually have something which remains pretty static over time. But I think within that segmentation, and this is what I think a lot of customer success teams are trying to do anyway, whether it's in an emergency situation or not, is to have more dynamic cohorts. Yep. So I think within this emergency situation, we will be hoping to create these dynamic cohorts and to understand, as we said earlier, the level of impact. And I think that will be a great learning path for customer success professionals in future to be able to adapt to whatever cohort situation comes in front of them. So whether it's an emergency situation like the one we're in now, or probably something hopefully in future with less of an emergency impact, but which will teach us perhaps to react with more agility than we are now.
Absolutely. I see Star shared a thought in the chat panel as well too. Thank you for that. Also to be positive and positivity in the organization during this difficult time. Don't forget to have fun along the way. And it's more about being in tune or tuned in. You know, for example, a hurricane, a strike, etc. So I think there's a lot to be said for paying attention and trying to keep your team focused and positive in what could be difficult times and triggering for those. So coming out of an emergency, you know, your customers, some of them may have gone away if they've gone out of business or just can't afford you anymore or whatever it may be. Others will be there. And, you know, I think depending how you acted during that emergency will color their view of how they view you after the emergency. Either they won't notice that you didn't do anything and that's fine. Or if they had other vendors who really stood up and did a lot for them, they will notice if you were one of them or if you're not as well too. But assuming that you did some good things and you were able to cultivate some relationships during the crisis, how do you build stronger relationships with existing customers as a result of the actions you took during the emergency? How do you capitalize on this after the fact because of what you did during?
Well, I think you should, as part of the relationship, continue to obviously have that relationship with them and probably build upon what you've already put into place with them, and be very open and transparent, you know, so that they really understand what you have done for them. And that's something which they'll take notice of in future for your future business going forward, right? So I think just be very bold, be very open, be very transparent, and make sure that probably not only your clients, you know, the people that are actually purchasing and the users of your products, but other people within the company as well. So communicate about it openly with your clients, with their ecosystem, and just generally. I think that's part of your brand and your added value to the community.
Yeah, this is a conversation to go with your customers on when you start talking about what worked, what didn't work, what could have been done better. That's one that you include the customer in that conversation to get their perspective on what was most meaningful to them and most effective for them. And what lessons can we learn for the next one? Because this is not going to be the last time that we come into a situation like this. Hopefully it's going to be rare, but we can't assume that it's not going to happen again.
I think that's a good point. And I'm curious, what do you guys think would be the most effective way to do something like that? Is that during individual EBRs and QBRs and one-on-one discussions with customers, or almost like a customer advisory council where you invite a group of them to come in together and say, how did this impact each of you? Where do you want to go?
I think you've got to look at the type of event. Sorry, Michael, but I think you're right. You've got to look at the type of event, and I think there's a need for both of those. This particular event now is going to be fairly long, and the implications quite wide. So that there's probably a good need to actually do the both of them. Find out what's worked across all your different companies, all your different customers, and I think you'll find different things with different customers. But there is absolutely a need at your next executive business meetings, your review meetings. Make sure that you're bringing this up as an agenda item. How is the customer functioning? Is everything working as they expect? Is there anything else that you could have done differently? So just to reiterate that, Michael, I think absolutely both of them, you need to do both.
Something a little hidden that takes on a little more as relevance coming out on the other side is also how fragile our one-to-one relationships are. So we have this concept that like the gold standard or the platinum standard for what we do is this really tight one-to-one relationship that one person has with a customer that we define as a person because we're building a relationship. But those things can get upended so quickly. I mean, at the end of the day, we are a team. Most cases, like we are a group of people trying to serve a small, medium, or large set of customers in some way, and we greatly buy down our risk by being able to create many-to-many relationships. It's not easy to do, but the last, I guess, 2 or 3, these were more regional. This was not virus related, but regional natural disasters that had a big impact on some of our customers' businesses. One of the first things we did coming out of that was start to build many-to-many relationships where there was not ideally just one person at that customer site that we knew of or could reach out to, but we'd have understanding or awareness of multiple people at the customer side, and they would have multiple points of understanding, still centralized through their CSM, but multiple touch points within the company so that we have if part of that web gets stretched or removed for whatever reason, that we still had some cohesion between us and the customer. And it's one of those things that's good business practice, I guess, anyway, but really gets heightened when we're doing an after action report on coming out the other side of an emergency, out the other side of a disaster. How could we have better served? And a lot of it is just knowing more people so that we can be quick when we can connect when we need to.
I think that's so important. And, a lot of organizations I talked to today still like, we can't even get our customers on a phone call. We don't have the right customer. We have someone in procurement or someone in IT, no one in the business. This situation can also, refocus you on how important it is to have those many-to-many relationships. And, how do you build that relationship in mass such that, are you using video? Is everything, all the messaging and stuff that you're sending out, is it reinforcing that experience, that message all the way through? So even if it's not a direct conversation, the people on the receiving end feel closer to you and your organization. Jason, you hit on another point too of this may be the current situation may be a long-term crisis and things like that. If so, do we need to do some lessons learned partway through, or how do we engage customers 6 weeks from now or 8 weeks from now to say, where do we need to pivot? Where do we need to evolve our response?
I think you do, and I think that the scale of an emergency may change during the length of that emergency. So I think this isn't something you just do once and forget about it. I think you as a business, you as a customer success organization professional, have to be conscious of what the ongoing impact is to your customer and how it's changing. So I think it does change, and I think you've got to be very conscious of what is the ongoing communication you want with your customer. This isn't just a one-off. I'm going to phone up this week and tell them, yeah, I'm here if you need me. You've got to make sure that you're listening to what is going on in the marketplace, what's going on in their industry, how they're impacted, and be prepared to shift and change as you need to. So I think depending on the severity of the overall emergency, it's potentially a very significant piece of work that you're going to have to take on and do, but it needs someone like a CSM to start leading this, or the CSM team.
Yeah, definitely. I think also to that point too, it's coming out of this, when you do your after action reviews and all that good stuff, what do you need to change in future customer onboarding of new customers to set expectations, to help identify their needs right up front, to find out if we need to be embedded in their disaster recovery plans, all that great stuff, and really say, how do we use this as a catalyst for setting expectations of, we're not just here to take your money, we're here to make you successful through good times and bad, sort of the marriage clause of a business relationship, if you will. One final question for the group as well too. So picture it, you've come through, the emergency is over, people are back to normal operations. You've done a great job of really being proactive and helping customers in a way that may have gone above and beyond. What do you do to actually capitalize on that for future sales and marketing and reference points?
Well, I would say that there might be some good things which come out of this, that there might be different ways of doing business, different ways of engaging with your clients, different ways that the customer success team and all the other different internal departments are actually engaging with the customers, which may mean that you can actually change the way in future that you're actually going to help your customers. So I think it's important to identify with your customers, as Michael just said, what are those aspects perhaps which you want to maintain in your future way of engaging with them. And then I think the other analysis is, what would business as usual look like? How are you going to readapt to a new standard of doing business as usual with your clients, and determine what would that look like? Because you're not going to be in emergency mode all the time. As soon as the crisis is over, then you need to readapt again to doing business as usual. So I think, again, it's like another analysis of what that takes in order to get to that flow of doing things as usual again.
Great. Michael, any thoughts?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, one of the things that you could keep in mind through this is we certainly hope that you will have a bunch of very powerful customer advocacy stories from your customers who recognize you. And of course, it's always nice if your customer tells you how wonderful you were. What you're, of course, hoping for is that your customer will tell other people how wonderful you were, because you can't buy that advertising, and there's nothing more powerful.
Yep. No, I think that's true. And being able to sell on, we deliver business outcomes and here's proof. I even wonder too, is there some way to do some mini version of like a net promoter score during an emergency? What would you say about our ability to help you during a response or emergency, and how would you rate us? That you could ask in real time during the crisis and get some feedback. Are we meeting their expectations? And maybe NPS isn't quite the right tool.
Yeah, that would scare me.
Yeah, I'd be very conscious about a bit too much survey fatigue, but I think that data point maybe afterwards, how did we respond?
Yeah.
Did we deliver what you expected?
Yeah, I can see where customers don't want to fill out a survey in the midst of a crisis, but even on a phone call or something like that, on a scale of 1 to 10, how are we doing would be interesting.
Yeah, that's a one-on-one conversation.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we wind up then, thank you so much to the panel. Any last bit of advice or thoughts that have come out of this conversation that you would like to share or think about? No is an okay answer. We've learned that being silent sometimes is the right approach.
I think one of the key things is this is new ground. And I don't think there is a wrong or right answer. And I think there's just we've got the benefit of a really fantastic customer success community globally that we can all help each other from and learn from and help our customers with. So I think I really encourage people to listen to what the community are doing globally, because there's some really good things, and share it with there. But it is a new situation. I really don't think we've had anything like this before.
So just keep open-minded and just think out of the box, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, Jason, you led with, hey, maybe this is the first of multiple conversations. I'll be very curious. I think everybody on this call, not just panelists, but like everybody is going to have 90 more days of experience with this in about 90 days. And hearing what we actually did, what worked, what didn't, I think will be fascinating. And I'm sure be nice to see some excellent case studies starting to pop up on the Customer Success Association site. Like we will have that kind of knowledge at that point. It'd be really, we have the mechanism to share it and learn from it in real time. I'm kind of looking forward to that.
Absolutely. And to everyone out there too, I would say special thank you for joining us as well. But if you have resources or tactical things that you've done or examples that you want to share, please go ahead and send us a link or a note or attach them. You can go to csmastermind.com/emergency, info@tritons.com, and we'll share them out. And, you know, Michael has a huge audience in the Customer Success Forum and Customer Success Association. You know, one thing I love about CS people is that they're very generous and giving, and be able to help each other and help our customers during a crisis like this and to learn from it is going to be huge. So thank you for all you can do to share. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. That's all the time we have. I really enjoyed the discussion. We'll probably have another one in the future. And I think to Marty's point, I look forward to seeing how people continue to learn and evolve, and would love to stay engaged in this conversation. So if you have ideas, please come ahead and share them with me. Thank you so much. And everyone have a great day. Really appreciate all your time.